Hello and welcome to the Point to Rise show. This is your host, Susanne, former international ballerina that found her passion in mindset, business, and technology, and is today the founder of Rise Media. It is my purpose to use all the experiences of my past to create a better, financially sustainable future for the performing arts industry. And that starts with every single one of us. I believe that being you is your superpower. And I am here to guide you, empower you, inspire you, and give you all the resources you need to rise above what you think you're capable of. Every week, I'll bring you 3 shows featuring guests, collaboration, and mini episodes to ensure that you have the support in your journey as a performer. I want you to know that you are not alone. Stop chasing and start creating. Your success starts now, here with you. So let's go. Hello and welcome back to the show. I'm so grateful you're here. So before we get started and I will introduce our guest today, I just want to let you know that I have set a very audacious goal for this show. My goal is to have anywhere upwards from 5,000 downloads per episode. And that means I am asking you, this community, the people that are listening to this show, to share this episode with one friend, just one friend. That's all you have to do. And this is how we can grow this podcast, how we can serve more performing artists and other people that are really listening into what we have to say on this show. To get more reach, to ignite more change, and to provide better perspectives and better outlooks for the future of the performing arts. So without no further ado, today's guest is Sarry Ibrahim. No, he is not a performing artist. He's very far away from being a performing artist. However, so we met through him actually contacting me and saying, hey, I would love to be on your podcast. What can we chat about? And since I'm not only big into collaboration, but also wanting to bring more topics that we actually never talk about on, in the performing arts as artists. So this is why he's here. He is a financial planner and the member of the Bank on Yourself organization. He helps business owners and real estate investors grow safe and predictable wealth without having to take unnecessary risks. So today we're going to dive into what that actually really means on like a collective impact, how he does that. And we're also going to dive into what could that look like for artists? What could that look like for arts organizations? How can we move away from the non-for-profit model in the performing arts? So without no further ado, here is our conversation. Sarry, thank you so much for being here. I am so looking forward to this conversation. We chatted already a little bit. So what I want to start first with is just a wee bit of your background, high level. Just how did you get into finances? Why was that interesting to you? And what are you doing? What lights you up currently?
Yeah, absolutely, Susanne. So thank you so much for having me on. I'm really glad to be here. And yeah, kind of just an overview of my life and how I got into financial services. So really, at a young age, I was very kind of just fascinated with money, not so much of just like money itself, but really the thinking process that people have behind money. And I remember when I was a senior in high school, we had to take one class. It was like economics, and we had, or it was like consumer economics. So we had to go through like how to write a check, how to budget. And that was my favorite class. And I was like, at a young age, I wanted to make this into some sort of professional career. I didn't know what kind of career that would entail, like with money and handling money and talking to people and consulting. So I went to college, got a bachelor's degree. And then after that, I got my master's degree in business. And I was about halfway through the MBA program, and I needed to work somewhere. Like I needed to get professional work experience. I still haven't been working anywhere yet. So I worked at Allstate Insurance. I was in consulting and worked there for a couple of years, and then got into healthcare. So I was working with a lot of people who were retirees, and Medicare is what it's called. And one of my clients, I actually noticed a lot of my conversations with clients involved money, not just so much about the insurance products or the products they were using, but so much about like, budgeting and how to plan for the future. And I wanted to zoom in further into that industry, into more of the financial planning industry. So I started reading books on financial planning, and I read this book called The Bank on Yourself Revolution by Pamela Yellen. And the book talks about the strategy, the bank on yourself strategy, and how to revolutionize your financial planning. So I dove into that book, and really enjoyed it. And then I even signed up for their program. They had at the end of the book, there was like a section that said if you want to join our program as an advisor. I applied, got accepted, went through the training, and now I own a company called Financial Asset Protection. We're a financial services firm. We do financial consulting, planning, counseling, budgeting, pretty much anything you need to do in regards to money, especially for small business owners. We operate in all 50 US states. We could do some things in Canada and some things in Puerto Rico, but for the most part, we're in all 50 states. So, and then I also have a show called Thinking Like a Bank, and then kind of branded that concept of how one can think like a bank. So that's overall a high level overview of what I do.
Wow, awesome. I love it. Okay, let's get started in terms of, it is so revolutionizing to hear for me as a former performing artist, that you actually weren't brought up with any kind of limiting beliefs around money. You know, the reason why people are struggling is because we have somewhere deep down limiting beliefs. Would you could you share some that have been like coming up over and over and over again, perhaps not in your sphere right now, however, like what is it that you hear where money is coming from, like or the belief is coming from a lack mentality or a limiting belief, and how is that actually playing into like an everyday life?
Yeah, okay, good question. So, and I hope I'm answering this correctly. So, I think that one big misconception people have about money is that they think that the money, the income they make, or the amount of money they have is completely separate from their mindset. In other words, those are two separate aspects. You have money over here and income over here, and then you have your knowledge and your mindset and your beliefs over here. When in reality, they are the same thing. In other words, what you know about money and what you believe in money is actually proportional, or it's reflective of how much money you have and how much money you make. So with that, and I'll explain further, meaning that people who make more money and have more money simply means that they know more about how money works in the world, and they know more about saving it and growing it and investing it, and they've been coached and mentored in that way and trained in that way to earn more money and make more money. And then vice versa, people who don't have enough money or don't make enough money have a lack of understanding of how money operates in the world. They have a lack of understanding of financial planning and investment knowledge, and a lack of accountability and mentorship in their lives.
Beautiful, because it really truly doesn't have anything to do with us. It just has to do something with the knowledge that we
Yes.
have been exposed to or chose to take in, where we are in our financial journey. So I
Yeah.
love that reframe, because society at times has us
Mhm.
believe that we are worthless if we don't have money, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Isn't
exactly.
that the
Yeah,
truth? Yeah.
exactly. And I think that every solution, every financial situation has a solution. Just the same way how if you had, for example, if you wanted to become a better athlete, you would work with a coach. And if you wanted to lose weight, you would work with a coach. If you wanted to be educated in a certain area, you would have a tutor, a professor, you would have people pushing you that way. And the same is true with money. Like if you wanted to get ahead with money and solve financial problems, you would need professional help in that area.
Yes, you would. Exactly. And for some reason, we don't think that applies to money,
Yeah.
because here's the story that I heard. Well, you should know how to manage your money. You should know what to
Yeah.
do with it. We never learn about it in school, really, right? We
Yeah.
only know about money as in it's a scarce commodity and you need to
Yes.
hang on to it, don't spend it. And if you do, you're a bad person. Well, yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
right. And when I look at like particularly my audience, the story around money is, if you love something that you do, you don't necessarily have to earn all of that.
Mhm.
You can just, and I think that is something that I really want to dive in with you after we're talking a little bit about the bank on yourself concept and what
Mhm.
that means. Well, let's do that first. So help us understand, as let's say people that have really not been taught that money is energy, that
Mhm.
money isn't anything bad, that you can do so many great things with money. And if you don't want to have it for yourself, then give it away, right? Like
Mhm.
there's always that friction. So let's talk about the bank on yourself concept first. Like, what does that look like? And if you could be very
Yes.
general,
Yes.
like,
Yes. Of course.
yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah, so the bank on yourself concept was invented by Pamela Yellen. It was introduced in her book, the Bank on Yourself Revolution book. And the concept talks about a different way of financial planning. So in most situations, when people hear, especially in North America and the US and Canada, when people hear the terms like financial planning, they think of going to their bank or their investment advisor and then simply investing the money in the stock market or in bonds or mutual funds. That's typically the route that most people take when it comes to financial planning. And the book, The Bank on Yourself Revolution, kind of disputes that conventional, traditional thinking of money. Is that instead of just making money and then investing it through your investment advisor in the stock market or in different places, what if there's another way you can invest your money and grow it over time without having to worry about the risks of the stock market? That's in general terms what bank on yourself means. What the bank on yourself concept is that you are you have an alternative way of growing your money. And then to go further, the terms bank on yourself comes in the sense that you could become your own source of financing. So instead of, like conventional education teaches us that we borrow money from banks, we borrow, to buy homes, to buy cars, to fund things. So an unconventional approach that would be that you become your own source of financing. So in general terms, bank on yourself is a way for you to grow safe and predictable wealth over time while allowing you to become your own source of financing. I hope that was clear.
I love it. First of all, I love the question, what if? Because what if opens up everything. It makes
Yes.
our brain think from a completely different perspective. And I feel like we're not asking that question often enough, particularly when we're talking about money,
Mhm.
because we're we're putting ourselves in this box of knowing, not knowing, good and bad,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
Okay, so what other options are there? I am intrigued. Let's get into this. I mean, I've listened to a few of your podcasts. I'm like, okay, life insurance,
Yes.
borrowing, using, help me understand what that could look like. And particularly, let's look at people that may not in their early, I would say like 18 to 35, have all of the resources to really like invest into,
Yes.
like, let's dive into what is that really? What does that
Yeah,
look
exactly. Okay, so I want to kind of go a little bit backwards and
like, please?
talk about more is that in order to implement everything we're talking about today, you do not need to be ultra wealthy. You don't need to have extra money in order to implement these things. You could start doing these things that we talk about today on this episode with the money you already have. So I just want to make that clear because a lot of people that I've talked to in the past, they go, "Oh yeah, everything you talk about is really good, but I don't have enough money for this." And the reality is there's no really income level you need to get to. You can start implementing this as soon as possible. So if we wanted to think of a way like the perfect financial vehicle, we need to look at different angles. We need to look at different aspects of the vehicle. It can't just be how much is it going to grow by. That's just like one variable to consider. There's the return variable is important to consider. You also need to understand the taxes that are going to be due on it. So in other words, are you going to be taxed every year? Are you going to be taxed at the end of it? You want to consider the risk factors. How risky is this investment or savings vehicle you're going to use? And then number four, you want to also ask what are the how liquid is it? Can I, do I have to put money away in it, and then wait like 30 years to touch that money, or can I put money in and take money back out? What's the liquidity like? So you want to consider again. So the top four are the rate of return, the liquidity, the risk involved, and the taxes due. And then as of now, there's about 450 financial vehicles out there. And if you were to look at all 450 financial vehicles of all 450, there's only one of them that could accommodate the four needs of the rate of return, the liquidity, the risk, and the taxes. And that is cash value whole life insurance as used as a savings vehicle. Now, people are like, wait a minute, we were talking about money, we're talking about growing wealth. What does it have to do with whole life insurance or life insurance? So to kind of add a little bit more context, there's three types of life insurance. One type is called term life insurance. The second is whole life, and the third is universal life. So term is a set period of time. It's like the term. It's like the saying, term in the title of the policy. It's usually 10 years, 20 years, or 30 years. It has a start date. It has an end date. There's no cash value in it. That's term. Whole life, on the other hand, has the life insurance part to it, it also has cash value in it that you can grow and use that money. So that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about whole life insurance. And the third is universal life. I won't get too far into universal life because there's a little bit more moving parts to it. So I just want to make it very basic and easy to understand. So we're talking about whole life insurance. So out of all 450 financial vehicles out there, the only one that could accommodate the four factors is cash value whole life insurance. So I know that's a mouthful, but what questions do you have?
Um, a lot. Okay, so first of all, let's look at how many people actually do have life insurance policies. Okay, so when you're even in your 20s and 30s, you don't think that way yet.
Yes.
How can we, in this episode, really hone into the reasons why that is a great idea? Like, what are the even if you're feeling like this is too much and I don't need this yet, like what would your reaction be when you have conversations like that?
Yeah, I would zoom in. I would put the product aside, put the thing aside, and then focus on the person, right? Like, what is it that you want to accomplish? What's happening right now in your life? You know, what are some things you want to accomplish short term, long term? What are the reasons why those things are important to you, those goals? And what are your overall what things you want to accomplish in life? And then from there, we would find the necessary product and the way to help them get there, the tool, and then connect it all together. So that's kind of how I would approach it. One major problem in the financial services industry is that it's very product driven, meaning that you would go and talk to a financial advisor, and the next thing you know, they're going to sell you a product to invest in the stocks or bonds or mutual funds or somewhere else. And that's a problem because it's like, imagine this, Susanne. Imagine you go to the doctor and then you walk in and the doctor's like, all right, here's your prescription ready. You're like, I didn't even tell you what was wrong. I didn't tell you any symptoms or anything like that. That's how it is with financial services. It's that they're giving out the prescription before they even do the diagnosis part. You know what I mean? They need to understand the customer, understand where they're coming from. And that's how I would really frame it. I wouldn't want to just start off by saying you need life insurance, because what if they don't need life insurance? What if their goals are not to grow safe and predictable wealth, or their goals are not to, come ahead financially? Then I'm talking to the wrong person. You know what I mean? There's no agreement. We're not a good fit for each other.
Okay, so next question would be then, like if actually somebody comes to talk to you and has no goal, but would like to have some what's possible, enlightening them a little bit, what is actually possible, even though you may not make your 250,000 a year. What can you do, and what would be like your outlook further down the road in terms of establishing wealth?
Good question. Yeah. So in other words, what could we do in the meantime without committing to anything, without investing or saving any money? What are some things we could do right now?
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely. So I use this method called a personal financial tracker. So every day I use either a Google sheet or an Excel sheet, and I have the days, and I do it for every month. So like, for example, for January, and I have like January 1 all the way to January 31st for each sheet. And then I have like my checking account, savings account, cash, life insurance, and other places of cash. Then also I have the debt side too. So every day I'm tracking my the money I have, the debt I have, and how much I earn for that day. It takes me about 10 minutes to do every morning. And I do, before I do anything else, just log into all my accounts and then copy paste the numbers into there. And what happens is it does a couple of things. Number one, it makes you very crystal clear on your numbers. You know exactly how much money you have, you know how much debt you have, you know how much you're making. You can go back and easily check out how much money you made last month or the month before that. It's very concise. And that's one thing. The second thing is that it subconsciously trains you to attract certain things or to avoid certain things. So as you're plugging in these numbers and you're seeing, for example, your income section in there that says that, last month you made five. This is very relevant to people who are self-employed who can actually control the money they make. So let's say last month was 5,000. This month is 6,000. Next month, subconsciously, you might push yourself further to increase that income because you're tracking it. You can see it clearly. Or let's say you have debt. Let's say you have 3 credit cards, and then one of them is $300, another one is 1,000, and the third one is like 3,000. You can say, all right, you know what? I could just pay off one of them right now, and then just cut that whole section out. and you start having like games. You start like playing games, or what if I could pay off this by this time? What if I could increase income to this? What if I can add more to my savings at this time? And that's what you want to do. So you want to understand your numbers, you want to understand your goals, and then you want to kind of play games to get them. Like I have like set priorities, set goals to get them. And it's actually helped me a lot tremendously in my life. And I could actually create a financial tracker for clients and then send it to them for free. And at the end, when I'll include my email address and things like that at the end of the show. But I do that for free for clients. I create them a personal financial tracker and then just send it to them as an email.
Oh, wow. So I find that super intriguing. What we avoid is what is not going to change. So if we want to change our financial situation, or even to just gain a little bit more knowledge around where we are and where we want to go, that means we actually have to look at it. And let's be honest, how many people don't even know what their responsibilities are financially or what their assets are, right? Because it feels icky, because we have so many old stories behind it that we resent looking at it because it makes us so nervous.
Absolutely. So a lot of people, they don't want to look at the problem. They want to kind of avoid it and hopefully it goes away. There are so many times where we're doing a financial analysis with clients, and then they'll just say like, I have a lot of debt. And then we'll start going through different things, and that's the first time in their life they ever went through each one of their aspects or each one of their parts. It's a very common thing to actually avoid looking at financial problems, because you think that it's going to bring you down for that day if you look at it, if you confront it. And another thing too is that, like, what you avoid is probably the treasure is probably behind what you are avoiding. In other words, to get more out of life, you need to be more confrontational to the things you fear and the things that you're unaware of or unknowledgeable about. You want to confront them and not just focus on things you are knowledgeable about. You want to kind of go further into things that make you uncomfortable.
Now that I like a lot. Beautiful. All right. Let's pivot a little bit. I'm going to have some questions later on about the cash value whole life insurance, but that's between you and I. So we talked earlier a little bit about the, let's say, not financial state, but how the business model of the performing arts are set up, and how the people within this industry have, earned the starving artist medal, because really only the 0.5% are the ones that are thriving. Everybody else is just surviving barely because of the beliefs in there. So I'd love to dig in a little bit about, yes, the business model is set up as a non-for-profit, meaning that they're not breaking even in what they're taking in versus what's going out, or their overhead. And let's play a little bit of brilliant ID time. Looking at, so most organizations have a line of credit, quite high, like the Met has like $47 million of a line of credit that they tap in and out of. They have donors. Some bigger organizations have foundations and some funds that pay out on a yearly basis. And they have their revenue from shows. Okay. And these are, let's say, that's their revenue model. Which, in my opinion, just from like a really 30,000 foot approach, is not a very secure way of running your business, or even like nobody would run their personal finances like that. Right.
Exactly.
But we're doing it like this in this kind of industry. So when you just, from me talking about it, when you hear that, like, what is your gut instinct? Like, what is the first thing that really comes up? Can you share that?
So when you mentioned line of credit, that's one thing that kind of like stuck out, is like, what kind of, what terms are we talking about, like interest rates and how often you pay it back. And then another thing too is I would look at, a couple of things. So you mentioned a lot of good stuff like the revenue. I would wonder how much control somebody has over these things. That's one thing I would want to kind of be curious about and to better understand, is the control that somebody would have with these.
Okay, so when we're talking about control, let's go a little bit deeper into that.
Mhm.
What do you mean with control, as in terms of revenue earning?
Yeah, exactly. Can you, like, for example, can I turn that up? Like, in other words, if I'm at a certain metric today, could I increase that in the future? Do I have control over, more revenue next month or next week or next month? That's something I would think is very important to ask yourself if you have the opportunity to make more of that.
Mm. So there is the opportunity. I don't think we're seeing the opportunity in that industry yet, because we're very much looking within one lane of how earning capacity is laid out. And you can only earn money by, putting performances on stage, meaning when that
Okay.
falls off,
Mhm.
then you really don't have any revenue coming in except going out and sourcing more through your patrons and donors.
Gotcha. Okay. So then I would ask too, was what if we can make another source of income then? What if we can create another passive source of income to not replace, but also to supplement some of the time where we're not working? In other words, do we always have to show up for work to make money?
Mm. Can you expand on that one? Because that's
Ye-
exactly where I'm like really wanted to go with. And thank you for
Yeah.
tapping into my head here. Okay, continue.
Yeah, absolutely. So there, passive income is where you're not necessarily working for that money, or if you are working, it's a very minimal amount. In other words, it's not always just time. You're not always trading time for money. There are so many ways, not enough for this podcast episode to talk about the different ways of earning passive income or passive money. It could be through real estate. It could be through other types of businesses. It could be in private ownerships of other businesses. There's so many different ways to earn passive income, but I definitely think that it's one of the foundations for becoming wealthy is having a source of passive income. Like, even for example, even for highly paid employees and business owners like attorneys and doctors who charge like $500 an hour or $1,000 an hour, eventually there's going to be a day where they're not going to be working anymore, or a day where they're not going to want to show up to a hospital or a courtroom just to make $500 or $1,000 an hour. So there has to be a way that they have to replace that income. In other words, they can get paid without having to go to work. And people do this all the time. Wealthy people do this all the time. It's one of the reasons how they get wealthy. I think the most common form of passive investments is through real estate, either through active investing in real estate or passive investing in real estate. So active investing in real estate is where you actively own a property, you manage it, you might have tenants, for example, you deal with the tenants. Passive real estate investing is the opposite of that. You're not doing anything. You are literally just moving money from your bank account to somebody else's bank account, and then you're earning monthly or quarterly distributions from that deal, passive income. A lot of our clients do passive real estate deals alongside the bank on yourself concept. So we actually show them how they can find the deals, how to vet the deals, and how to kind of start earning passive real estate income, even at a smaller amount. So a lot of times, a while ago, it used to only be open for people who had a minimum of $100,000 to invest in real estate. But there are ways to invest in real estate with like $10,000 or $20,000 nowadays. There are certain ways that you could do that through the right agencies and the right ways that you could invest into real estate with less than $100,000. In other words.
Hmm. And then you would literally create that passive income that you can, you know,
Yeah, you
count
would
on,
create.
and it's low risk. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You would start creating one source of passive income. Now the key is to have like 10 sources of income in your life. It could be through performing arts, through real estate, through other deals, that you would start creating your first passive real estate opportunity or your deal.
Okay. So what would that look like? Let's say for a non okay. So here's the dilemma.
Yes.
And what I'm seeing is that the belief is that only wealthy people are acquiring more wealth
Mhm.
because they have the money to invest in, where I think it's the only thing that's different is their mindset. That's why they really
Yeah.
truly have acquired the wealth, right? So when
Yes.
we're looking at the performing arts industry, it is not a very wealthy or
Yes.
abundant mindset in the entire industry.
Yes.
So what could be ways, and even like performers that are living literally paycheck to paycheck, what could they do from your perspective to actually like start creating, even if it's like $50 a month that they're
Yes.
putting
Yes.
somewhere? How can they do that?
Yeah. So step one, definitely to get a coach or a financial planner or somebody to work with. And then there are ways that you can work with people who won't charge you a fee upfront. It's kind of like pro bono work. Our work too, we don't charge for upfront fees. We get paid after a solution has been implemented. So that means that somebody could reach out to us. We could work with them throughout the whole process, and then they wouldn't have to. They wouldn't actually start funding the deal until after they get all the advice and after they've reached their goal. So that's the first thing, is get advice from a professional without having to pay upfront for that advice. The second thing is zoom in on your goals and make them very specific. So I assume that a lot of people in performing arts might want to simply just make it, right? They want to go from where they're at to the next big level, but that could be just a huge jump. And I would say, like, become very specific, like dollar amounts. What's your projected dollar amount this year, next year, third year? In other words, if you don't plan it, you won't get it. If you don't plant the seeds for the things you want, you probably won't get those things. You get what you think about, in other words. So be very precise with your goal setting. And then obviously have an ongoing plan, not just meet with an advisor once or a financial person once, but meet with them on a recurring basis. Those are some things I think that, and then even, number four, become self-educated also in the space of money. So you have your subject matter expertise that you're aware of and and you're knowledgeable in, but also have an idea of money. There's so many nowadays, there's so much free content on YouTube, on podcasts, just like this, free books, free PDFs that people can read to learn more about money. And I think that's a huge important part of getting ahead financially and really like understanding how money works, is all the self-education. And notice how I'm saying not just education on money, but self-education, which is different from traditional education.
In other words, you don't have to go to school to
Yeah.
get your MBA in financial strategies. All you have
Yes.
to, you can start with picking up the first book or listen to a podcast, or like even like write down what your limiting beliefs or beliefs are around money. And then
And I would say, Susanne, that self-education is even more beneficial than traditional education. In other words, you're going to learn more about money by reading books from actual people and listening to podcasts and watching YouTube videos about people who are making money and doing things with money than you would getting a traditional education. Because if you got a master's degree, for example, in finance, you're going to study what companies did 100 years ago, interest rates, things that are probably irrelevant to today's world. You're going to learn a lot about finance, but as far as practicing money today, you're much better off understanding self-education or practicing more self-education in regards to money, for sure.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. I'm mostly about self-education, in particular when it comes around these subjects, because the subject matters are more, they're different now than they were like 50 years ago or 100 years ago when it was written. Okay, so that's very intriguing. I'm intrigued. I usually ask the question, what you would tell your 16-year-old self. We're not going to do that, because you seem very young. And also I feel like there isn't so much perhaps pain, what I'm seeing in other guests. But what I really want to close off today with is you're your own boss, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yes.
you're working for yourself. Okay. Talk to us about what it really means to motivate yourself on a daily basis, meaning what gets you out of bed? Like, what is your structure? How do you do that? And what kind of mentors or teams do you have in your life that help you support that?
Yeah, so I would say that time management in my situation is, as first for being self-employed, it's the most important part, is managing your time properly. And I definitely have a lot of systems for that. So I'm not an expert in this space, but I had to force myself to get better at time management. So the first thing I do is everything I have is scheduled in a calendar at a certain time. Like, for example, this podcast episode you and I are doing right now. This is the only thing I'm doing right now. I blocked out an hour for this time. Even if it's not going to take an hour, I still blocked out an hour just to make sure that I'm only working on this. Another thing too I do is I do checklists. So every day I open up my calendar, see what's in my calendar, and then I write out everything from step one through like whatever the end of the day is. And what this actually does is that some people might think that it's like um, wasting time, that you're seeing it on a screen and then you're writing it on a notebook. But what happens is it builds momentum. You start writing, you start working in the morning. And even if I did this at 6 a.m., I would start having, my brain would start working, and I write everything out. And as I'm completing these tasks, once they're done, I cross them off. And then now it's creating momentum to cross off the next task. So I'm constantly looking for things to get done at a certain time. I also prioritize my top biggest things that I have to do for the day. So this way I don't get distracted by different ideas and different opportunities. I'm super focused on what I have to do for that day, and also the topic. Like, for example, if it's for podcasting or for my business, those are the only things I'm focusing on. Other things, if they don't fall into one of those two categories, I'm going to exclude them for that day. So that way I'm very cautious about what I'm thinking about and what I'm focusing on throughout the day. So those are just some of the things I do to manage my time. And I don't multitask. At least I try. The only times I do multitask if I absolutely have to, but I don't. And the reason why I don't is because you actually get things done faster and more accurate when you only do one thing at a time. I watched this video one time where this guy was saying that he was talking about the disadvantages of multitasking. And he said that if you were given the task of writing A through Z on one line, on top of a line, and on the bottom of that, you write numbers 1 through 26. There are two ways to do it. One way, you could just write A through Z on top and then 1 through 26 on the bottom. Or the second way is you could do A and then up top and then 1 on the bottom, and then B and then 2 and then C and then 3. Do you know which way is faster to do it?
Well,
It's to do. They're good.
I would presume it's the A to Z and 1 to 26.
Exactly. It's faster. It's 3 times faster to do it that way, to go A through Z and then 1 through 26, rather than doing A to 1 to B to 2. And it's because your brain is focused on letters at one time, and then it transitions and it focuses on numbers. A lot of people think that it's actually faster to do A1, B2, C3, because it gets things more done quicker that way, but it actually takes 3 times longer to do it that way. And the same is true with writing emails, talking on the phone with people, doing podcasts, updating your website. You want to do one thing at a time. You actually get more things done that way, and then they're actually more accurate, and you're more engaged and you're more in the moment when you do one thing at a time.
Oh yeah, yeah. And so I so can relate. I am still working on, when you're creative, like it can be challenging. I don't want to say it's hard and impossible. It totally is impossible. You just have to be really focused on how you schedule your time. I learned that writing out your schedule in the morning, as you just said, from you, because I thought it was redundant, but I get your brain working. You can insert things or take out things that may not be applying for you, how you're feeling, or what is really, really important on that day. Back to the multitasking, just really quickly, because we think we're so much better when we can do this. And it seems to be something that sometimes is really rewarded. It takes our brain actually a few minutes to get back to a different task. Like when we're switching, to really be focusing on different tasks is impossible for our brain. And we're taking so much more energy away from our energy source than if we were to finish one thing after the other. Quickly, time versus money, meaning money is a renewable resource.
Yes.
Many people don't believe that, where time, I believe, isn't. Share your thoughts on that.
Absolutely, I agree. Not only is it not, time, everybody has the same amount of time. Every human on earth has the same amount of time, same amount of hours, days, everything is going to be the same. Obviously, money is different. People have different amounts of money and different frequencies and different volume, but money is the only thing that people have the same of. And time is the only thing that cannot roll over. So for example, you wake up in the morning, you have, let's say you have 24 hours a day. It's not like if you didn't use some of it, you can roll that time into the next day. That's it. It clears. You start off with 24 hours and then it clears back to 0. So it's almost like, imagine you were giving, $24, $1 per hour. And then the next day you have to spend $24 that day. or else it's going to clear the next morning. How would you spend that money? That's kind of the same thinking process behind time, is that it's non-renewable. You cannot replicate it, duplicate it. The only thing you could really do with time is manage it properly, and then figure out other things to duplicate, like money, in other areas of your life, so that way you can spend more time focusing on the things that that you want. In other words, it's all about the time, not all about the money.
I like that. It's all about the time, not all about the money.
Yeah. Yes.
Dropping the mic on that one. Thank you. Is there anything you would like to maybe send us off with today? Some wisdom, something that you've learned, something that you think is important to share?
Yeah, so there's a lot when you're running a business, there's a lot going on, right? There's a lot of things to focus on, a lot of priorities. I think that one thing I want the audience to resonate with is remember to think like a bank. Think about the financial aspects of the business and how not just it works for your business, but how it works in the world, how money works in the world, kind of understand that. And I actually wrote a book, not really a book, it's more of an ebook. It's like a 40-page.
It's a book. Yeah.
And I actually have it available for free. So for listeners who want to check out the book for free, they can go to thinkinglikeabank.com, and then they could download the ebook for free. You would just go to thinkinglikeabank.com, and then as soon as you go there, you see a link, download ebook, and that's it. You download it, and it'll teach you, it'll show you more strategies about the things we talked about today. And then if you also want to reach out to me to discuss further consultations, that's all mentioned in the website, thinkinglikeabank.com, as well as in the ebook, Thinking Like a Bank.
Awesome. Thank you. I wanted to say, okay, where can we find you? But there you go. You did that. Awesome. Well, I'm going to go and I'm going to download that ebook.
Okay.
That is very generous of you for giving that away for free. I encourage you all to take advantage of that, because it's not that the sources and the resources and the knowledge isn't out there. It's, do we actually feel worthy of taking that in, right? And stepping out of our comfort zone and learning more. And I would say, like, letting go of the shame of not knowing it all.
Yes, absolutely.
Sarry, thank you so much. That was a delightful conversation.
Thank you.
I will definitely be somebody that's going to stay in touch with you, because I want to learn more. I also have big plans and look for advisors all the time. So thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you, Susanne. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening. If this message resonates with you, please pass it on to someone who needs to hear this right now. And if you like what you've heard, your feedback will go a very long way. If you just take 30 seconds and leave me a 5-star review, that would mean the world to me. Till next time, point at yourself to rise to all that you are capable of.